I never thought I'd be caught in such a mess at 31. When my father passed away suddenly from a stroke last spring, I was about to face a storm that would tear my family apart. Dad was a successful business owner who'd built a comfortable life for us. He owned 2 properties, our family house in the suburbs of Boston, and this gorgeous mountain cabin in Vermont, where we'd spent every summer since I was a kid. Those summers were special, just me and Dad, hiking trails, grilling on the deck, and sharing stories under the stars. The cabin wasn't fancy, but it held 20 years of memories. When the will was read, it seemed straightforward enough. Dad left the family house to my stepmom Rachel and her son Jason, while the cabin was left to me. I thought that was fair. They got the more valuable property in the city, and I got our special place. But things went sideways fast. Just days after the funeral, I drove up to the cabin, needing some quiet time to process everything. Instead, I found Rachel and Jason had already moved in. They'd changed the locks, and were acting like they owned the place. "Your father promised us this cabin," Rachel insisted when I confronted her. "We need it more than you do. I'm a single mother now, and Jason needs stability." She conveniently forgot to mention the house they'd inherited in Boston. I tried reasoning with her, showing her the will, explaining how much the cabin meant to me. But Rachel just scoffed and said I was being selfish. "You never accepted us as family anyway," she spat. The argument got heated, and I said some things I'm not proud of. I brought up how she'd always seemed more interested in Dad's money than being part of our family. It ended with me storming out, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I immediately contacted a lawyer who confirmed what I already knew. Legally, the cabin was mine. When I sent Rachel an official notice to vacate, she texted me a photo of the torn-up papers with a laughing emoji. That's when I realized this wasn't going to be easy. The situation exploded into a full-blown family crisis. My Aunt Marie backed me up, saying I deserved what Dad left me. But my Uncle Pete sided with Rachel, calling me heartless for trying to make a widow and her son homeless. Rachel was spreading her version of events to anyone who would listen, conveniently leaving out the part about owning the family house. I started doubting myself. Was I being cruel? Should I just let them have the cabin to keep the peace? But every time I looked at old photos of Dad and me at the cabin, my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about property. It was about honoring Dad's wishes and protecting the memories we'd made there. The whole mess was taking over my life. I had a good job at a software company, my own apartment in the city, and a girlfriend named Kate, who was starting to get frustrated with how consumed I was by this situation. I missed our 2-year anniversary dinner because I was stuck on the phone with my lawyer, and she wasn't happy about it. But I couldn't let it go. This was about more than just a cabin in the mountains. It was about standing up for what's right and honoring my father's final wishes. I just didn't realize then how complicated things were about to get, or the family secrets that were about to come spilling out. The legal battle dragged on for months, draining my savings faster than I'd like to admit. Rachel hired some hotshot lawyer who kept pushing this story about verbal promises my dad supposedly made. It was infuriating to watch them try to paint my father as someone who'd go back on his word to his own son. While the case crawled through the courts, Rachel and Jason stayed in the cabin, refusing to budge until forced by law. The family drama kept escalating too. Sunday dinners at Aunt Marie's became battlegrounds of passive-aggressive comments and pointed silences. Things hit rock bottom when she threw her wine in Uncle Pete's face after he called me a greedy vulture. In the middle of this mess, Jason reached out to me privately. His text message caught me off guard. I miss when things weren't so messed up between us. Mom's not telling the whole story, but I'm stuck in the middle. I felt bad for the kid. He was only 16 and caught between warring adults. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel might be using him to manipulate me emotionally. Then, out of nowhere, Rachel's lawyer approached us with a settlement offer. They'd move out, but I'd have to pay them a hefty relocation fee. It felt like extortion, paying them to leave a property that was legally mine. After weeks of negotiation, we finally agreed on a sum that wouldn't completely wreck my finances. Just when I thought it was over, Rachel pulled her next move. She went to the local paper with her story, painting me as this heartless monster who was throwing out a grieving widow and her teenage son. The article went viral in our community. Suddenly, I was getting hate messages from people I hadn't talked to since high school. Even distant relatives who hadn't bothered to check on me after Dad died were now experts on what a terrible person I was. My lawyer advised against responding to the media circus, saying it could hurt our case. But then Jason called me crying. What he told me turned everything upside down. "There's something you need to know," he said between sobs. I found some letters in Mom's desk. She was having an affair with Uncle Pete while Dad was still alive. The revelation hit me like a truck. It explained Uncle Pete's unwavering support of Rachel throughout this ordeal. Jason sent me photos of the letters. They were careful with their words, but there were enough hints to suggest a long-term affair. My lawyer said this information could change everything if we could prove Rachel had been unfaithful during the marriage. But I was torn about using it. Yes, it could help my case, but it would also destroy what was left of our family. More importantly, it would devastate Jason, who was innocent in all of this. While wrestling with this decision, I spent an afternoon at the cabin and found Dad's old hiking boots in the garage. Sitting on the deck where we used to talk for hours, I tried to imagine what he would want me to do. The cabin had been our special place, a sanctuary where we could be ourselves and forget about the complications of our blended family. I couldn't let go of that without a fight, but I was starting to realize that in family disputes like this, there are no real winners, only varying degrees of loss. The question was, how much more were we all willing to lose before this ended? The situation finally broke wide open, but not in any way I could have predicted. After months of negotiations, Rachel and Jason agreed to move out in exchange for the settlement money. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. When I arrived at the cabin after they left, my heart sank. The place had been trashed. The handmade coffee table Dad and I built together was smashed to pieces. Walls were damaged, furniture broken. It looked like they'd hosted a demolition party before leaving. I documented everything while fighting back tears of rage, but my lawyer warned that pursuing damages might restart the whole legal battle we'd just settled. Then came the letter that changed everything. A thick envelope arrived at my apartment, postmarked just days before Dad's death. Inside was a letter from him and a stack of documents that turned my world upside down. Dad had known about Rachel and Uncle Pete's affair for years. He'd stayed in the marriage for Jason's sake, but he'd been quietly gathering evidence and planning his exit. But the real bombshell was in the DNA test results included with the letter. Jason wasn't my dad's son, he was Uncle Pete's. Dad had discovered this but hadn't confronted Rachel before his stroke. In his letter, he apologized for leaving me to deal with the aftermath and explained that the cabin was meant as compensation for all the deception I'd unknowingly lived through. Everything suddenly made sense: Rachel's desperate grab for the cabin, Uncle Pete's fierce support, even the underlying tension I'd always felt with Jason despite trying to be a good stepbrother. But now I faced an impossible choice: reveal the truth and clear my father's name, or protect Jason from a revelation that would shatter his world. After weeks of therapy and soul-searching, I reached out to Jason, who had just turned 18. Over coffee at a quiet diner, I told him everything. It was the hardest conversation I've ever had. He alternated between anger, disbelief, and a strange sort of relief, saying he'd always felt like an outsider in the family, but never understood why. To my surprise, Jason asked if he could move in with me. He couldn't bear to live with Rachel anymore, knowing what she'd done. We've been roommates for the past few months, both healing in our own ways. The truth about Rachel and Uncle Pete eventually came out during a family gathering I didn't attend. Rachel apparently had too much to drink and confessed everything. The fallout was massive. Uncle Pete's wife left him, and Rachel moved across the country to find herself at some meditation retreat. The cabin's been fully repaired now. Walking in for the first time after the renovation, seeing it restored to how it looked when Dad was alive, brought tears to my eyes. But they were different tears this time, not of anger or loss, but of healing. I've started hosting family weekends at the cabin, trying to rebuild what's left of our relationships. Aunt Marie has been amazing, especially with Jason. Kate and I got back together after running into each other at a friend's wedding, and she's been incredibly supportive of both me and Jason. Looking back, I don't regret fighting for what was legally mine, but I do regret how ugly things got. Dad's letter sits in my desk drawer now, a reminder that family secrets have a way of coming out eventually. The cabin isn't just my sanctuary anymore. It's become a place of healing for our broken family. Every time I sit on that deck now, watching the sunset just like I used to do with Dad, I feel like we're finally finding peace, one day at a time. Life has a way of surprising you, and sometimes the family you end up with isn't the one you started with. But maybe that's okay. Jason and I might not be stepbrothers by blood, but we've become real brothers through all of this. And I think Dad would be proud of that. The cabin still holds all our old memories, but now we're making new ones too. Different ones. Better ones. And somehow, that feels exactly right. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.